So whenever you got to Arizona, you didn't end up trying out for the softball team, and you found a rugby team. What was that initial experience like for you?
Well, right off the bat, being like on the other side of the country, like you're just thinking about friends. Obviously, I was looking to be active, but you just want friends. And I mean, the rugby community is just so welcoming right off the bat. It's like, I mean, I feel like I have a pretty similar story to most people who start playing in college. You just find a bunch of like minded people, a bunch of friends, and then a sport in which you get to do something totally unique for women. Uh, so, I mean, it really was like love at first sight type of thing.
Was there anybody that was kind of mentoring your pathway whenever you first got onto the team?
Well, the coach at the time was Nancy Purdon, and she's just very slowly I got to see just how important she was to rugby in that area. Everywhere we went, somebody knew her. She just knew everybody, and so she was the first person that kind of took that environment of the team, like this happy little family that you have, and put it in a larger context.
Mm-hmm.
Once I started getting like what a connected and like just bigger community it was, like really started, like it was something that I wanted to do like for my life.
Yeah.
Um, so in that regard, definitely Nancy Purdon. Um, yeah.
That's awesome. And so you get this coach, and what was that first year like? Like how? Because I mean, look, even though it's all sports, and obviously there's a mentality that goes along with it, but you're going from softball from for what it's worth, a more rigid system that was in the Coast Guard. You have an understanding for Arizona, but you go to rugby, which in the early '90s isn't the tight knit organization of professionalism that we might be closer to have now. But what was that first year like, transitioning from softball, non-contact, except for maybe a few hits here and there, to now I got to hit people on the field. I'm taking hits. I'm running with the ball. I'm doing so much.
Yeah, that was, I mean, we are talking about 15, 17 years ago. I'm trying to get back there. Um, it was, I grew up in a football family, so just being able to go from playing in the field with your family and your dad and your brothers and actually getting able to do it, like that was just such a freeing, fun experience. And then, yeah, back then in that area, it was less rigid in terms of, like, we played on a team that had maybe some questionable players on there in terms of age or eligibility, but everybody kind of did in like
Right.
the California area. So you got to play with some really experienced people and just see a different side that maybe you wouldn't get to experience now in college because it is more, it's more popular, more regulated as it should be.
Right.
So it was just like a really overwhelming, wonderful year, like totally life changing.
And was it did you guys have success in that first year? Was it something that you were like, oh man, we're really winning and going, or was it just like, dude, I love this culture, and it just keeps me going regardless of what the results had been?
Yeah, it was more. I think we were like a 500 club. Like we could hold our own, but I don't think we were. I don't think we won for any titles when I was playing. I also can't remember if like D2 national championships were happening then. I don't, so there wasn't necessarily this national title to aim for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a little bit, I guess more social in that regard.
What about the teams that you guys were in the area? Was it something that what was the connection like? Because here in the South, we have our teams obviously spread out amongst a radius of 8 hours, give or take. So it's just everything spread out, and so if you're not willing to at least go a minimum of 4 hours to some place, you probably aren't going to connect too much with teams. Now Arizona, I know the West Coast is a little bit tighter knit, while more spread has more options available, but it's lot more close knit. Was that the situation that you guys had for Arizona, or did you guys have to travel a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty similar to what is still the case there now. Like, you have Arizona State and Arizona, which are 2 hours apart, but then everybody you play is in California. So that's a minimum of 6 hours. You go up to LA, that's 9 hours. So hopping in a van and, spending half your trip in a car was totally normal for us, which, like, it later made me laugh when I was playing in New York and we'd have to drive down to Philly and the team would be like, like Smiga.
No, I like my family lives up in South Jersey too, in Morris Plains area. So I remember when I would drive around and I realized everything's a 4 hour radius around here in New York, and everything. I was like, this is great. I don't have to go, 8 hours over to Tampa. I don't have to go 11 hours up to Carolina or 8 hours to Atlanta. I was like, this is amazing,
Yeah.
But people would be like, oh, this is such a long trip. I don't think they know,
Yeah.
So you talk about how you played in New York. So what was that transition? What was the next step after you started playing at Arizona? What happened from there that led you to New York?
Yeah. So I moved back home and then, I was trying to get my feet career wise. And once I got a job out on Long Island, I started playing for a new team out there, Suffolk Bull Moose.
Hmm.
And then I played a couple of years there until I got a job with Rugby Magazine in the city. And that necessitated a move to Hoboken. And that's when I aligned with the Village Lions, which I would consider my home club. For like, yeah.
So you'd always been working on communications whenever you were in school, correct?
Yeah.
What was the gravitation to that field for you?
It was actually when I was in the Coast Guard and we had our first, one of our first English classes, the book that we were assigned was The Perfect Storm. And I don't know if you remember that movie, and
Yeah, yeah, of course, with George Clooney and everything. Oh yeah.
yeah, and I was like, I was like really upset that this was the book that we were assigned. And I think that was the moment where I realized, this is, I don't belong in this science heavy, field of study. I need, that's when I realized I wanted to stay in like liberal arts and English and so forth. So that's what I did in Arizona and, started interning at book publishing companies and then just kind of really followed the jobs in New York.
Was there always kind of this intent to be able to go back to New York to work in that? Because I mean, you're talking about East Coast, where obviously you carry most of these major publications. You're either going one or two directions, going L.A. or you're going, New York. Was there always an intent in that direction?
Yeah, as soon as I realized that that was the field I wanted to pursue, I knew I'd have to get to New York at some point. And it took a couple steps, but yeah, that was the ultimate goal.